Imagine this. A world painted in just stark black and white almost. A biting cold that just sinks right into your bones.
Yeah.
The air smells sharp, like frost, and the very first light of dawn is kind of struggling to break through this sky that looks bruised, almost like it knows something huge is about to happen.
Yeah, a really vivid scene.
That's the picture on December 1st, 1805. We're talking about the snow-dusted fields of Moravia, and right there, in the middle of it all, is Napoleon Bonaparte. He's waking up on the edge of an event that's going to completely change the course of history.
Austerlitz, the Battle of the Three Emperors.
Exactly. Welcome to the Deep Dive. This is where we take a whole pile of sources, articles, research notes, and we really dig in to pull out those crucial bits of knowledge, basically giving you a shortcut to being genuinely well-informed on a topic. So today, our mission is to unpack this incredible, almost minute-by-minute look at the day before Austerlitz, December 1st. We're looking at it through Napoleon's eyes, basically. Our source material, it almost feels like reading his personal logbook, tracking his actions, maybe even his thoughts hour by hour.
Which is just fascinating, right? That level of granularity.
Totally. So we're going to distill the really vital insights from this single, incredibly intense 24-hour period. We want to understand what made him such an effective leader, such a brilliant strategist.
Yeah.
And, what can we actually learn from him about things like preparation, that relentless focus he had, and making huge decisions under immense pressure.
It's really about pulling back the curtain, isn't it? Seeing how this complex mind works when faced with extreme challenges.
Yeah, and maybe finding some aha moments that click for you, whether you're, prepping for a big presentation, tackling a complicated project, or just dealing with your own demanding day.
And what's really striking here, I think, is how these tiny granular details paint such a vivid picture. It's not just what he did, but you start to see the relentless focus, the mind operating at peak capacity. It reveals the underlying principles guiding his actions.
It's like a masterclass in strategic execution.
Exactly. Viewed through this microscopic lens of just one single monumental day, you really get to witness the sheer force of will, the mental power needed to orchestrate something on this scale.
Okay, so let's unpack it. Our deep dive into December 1st, 1805. It doesn't start with some leisurely morning routine, not at all. It begins with this almost jarring intensity. Napoleon woke up before dawn. We're talking around 5:30 a.m.
Which is already intense for most people.
Right. And our sources say he'd slept very little, maybe just a few hours. And he wasn't in some grand bed. He was wrapped in that famous gray overcoat, stretched out beside a makeshift field desk.
That image alone says so much. He's literally sleeping on the battlefield, completely immersed.
Totally. This isn't the emperor enjoying comfort. This is the general totally focused on the campaign.
And that unconventional start, it immediately signals this extraordinary level of dedication. You have to wonder about the physical endurance, too.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, minimal sleep wasn't just a choice. It feels like a deliberate commitment. It suggests every waking moment, maybe even those few hours of sleep, were totally dedicated to the military goal. That kind of discipline is, wow, it's exceptional.
It really is.
Most leaders, especially at that level, you'd think they'd prioritize comfort, rest, recuperation. But Napoleon seems to have just foregone it. His personal comfort was completely secondary.
So what kind of internal drive does that take to function, let alone strategize brilliantly on so little rest day after day?
It's a stark contrast to how we often think about leadership today, isn't it? The whole self-care mantra. For Napoleon, maybe self-care was just winning. Securing victory was the priority.
It speaks to this deep, almost obsessive focus on the mission above everything else. He was squeezing every possible second of productivity out of the day.
Definitely. And his mind didn't sort of ease into the day either. The sources tell us as he's sipping his strong coffee, probably black, at 5:30 a.m., his mind was, quote, already racing.
Instantly on, no warm-up lap needed.
Right. Spread out in front of him is a map, likely a detailed topographic one of the whole area around Austerlitz, and he immediately dives into studying enemy movements.
And those enemies are close, right? The combined forces of the Austrians and the Russians, led by Tsar Alexander himself and the very experienced General Kutuzov. They're just miles away. A big battle is basically unavoidable at this point.
And he's getting intel, too. His top marshals, guys like Soult, Lannes, Murat, they'd send reports overnight. So he's digesting this crucial real-time information right from the get-go.
But here's the thing that really stands out. It's kind of astonishing, actually. He dictates 3 critical letters before speaking a single word aloud to anyone. Yeah. His pen was described as scratching with precision. And apparently his aides could barely keep up. This isn't just waking up, this is like his brain is already sprinting from the very first second he's conscious.
That is a remarkable display of immediate executive function. Just bang, straight into analysis and action.
Yeah.
His brain wasn't, gradually warming up. It was fully engaged, analytical, the moment he opened his eyes.
And dictating letters first. What does that suggest?
Well, the fact they were urgent letters, maybe orders to commanders, maybe instructions back to Paris, setting priorities before even a simple good morning, it suggests this almost involuntary need to get critical thoughts and decisions out there immediately.
Like he couldn't hold them in.
Maybe. Or just extreme efficiency. He wasn't waiting for information or for his staff to ask him things. He was demanding info and acting on it instantly. The sheer speed and volume of his output right then at dawn, it set this incredibly high, almost frantic, yet somehow precise pace for everyone.
Yeah, you can imagine the aides scrambling.
Totally. It implies a mind so organized, so laser-focused, that it could just instantly identify top priorities, synthesize all this complex intel coming in, and start executing multiple tasks. All before most of us have, finished our first coffee.
It shows he was constantly thinking ahead, wasn't he? Anticipating needs, preparing responses before anyone even asked. A really proactive leadership style.
Yeah.
No moment wasted.
Exactly. Leaving nothing to chance, utilizing every single second.
So it's not just about what he did, but also apparently how he looked doing it. By 6:45 a.m., even though the sources say he wasn't vain, he dressed with intent.
Intent. That's a key word.
It really is. He chose the simple uniform of a colonel of the Chasseurs à Cheval. Now, these weren't like the fancy Imperial Guard. The Chasseurs à Cheval were light cavalry, often used for reconnaissance, skirmishing. It symbolized the front line, the gritty reality of a soldier's life.
So not the emperor in dazzling regalia.
Not at all. He actively hated aristocratic pomp. He wanted to be seen as a soldier among soldiers. And then, of course, there's the hat. That famous bicorne hat sitting squarely on his head, but tilted sideways, made him apparently recognizable from miles away.
That wasn't just getting dressed, was it? That was a deliberate strategic move. Image projection.
Completely.
And this gives us such a critical window into how deeply he understood symbolism and how it impacts morale, leadership. His choice of clothes wasn't about ego or fashion. It was a psychological tool.
How so?
Well, by picking that simple uniform of a line officer, not some bejeweled imperial getup, he's building solidarity, trust with his men. He's directly appealing to their sense of shared identity, shared purpose. He's projecting this image of a leader who's one of them, who gets their hardships, not some distant, fancy emperor.
Which must have been crucial for an army made up of conscripts and hardened veterans.
Absolutely. Maintaining cohesion, keeping that fighting spirit high. And that hat, that distinctive tilt, it wasn't just fashion, it was a beacon. Think about it, battlefield communication was basic then. That hat made him instantly recognizable across huge distances. It was a symbol of his presence, his direct command.
Like he was always watching.
Exactly. It shows how even small details, like how a leader appears, can deeply affect how followers perceive them, how motivated they are. It proves that seemingly minor things can carry huge strategic weight in building loyalty and trust.
And that strategic image, that whole soldier among soldiers thing, it immediately translated into direct, almost electrifying action. By 8 a.m., he's mounted. On a walked horse, no less.
A very striking image against that frosty landscape.
Totally. He rides along the lines of his army, and the sources describe his troops standing there in the cold, disciplined and ready, despite the chill, despite the, immense pressure of what's coming.
Holding formation, waiting.
And then he talks to them with his Corsican accented French, which apparently was distinctive, maybe even a bit foreign to Parisian ears. But to his soldiers, it was the real voice of their emperor.
Authentic.
Yeah. And he proclaims, with this powerful simplicity, "Soldiers, the enemy thinks we are beaten. Tomorrow we shall show them the courage of the French."
Simple, direct, powerful.
It wasn't just a formal speech. It was a performance, a direct appeal. And it got cheers. It ignited fire, even in guys who must have been exhausted and freezing.
Yeah.
You can almost feel that surge of energy, that renewed sense of purpose just rippling through the ranks.
It's a total masterclass in direct leadership, in motivational speaking. And here's where it gets, I think, really interesting.
Go on.
This isn't just boosting morale, it's actually a strategic psychological operation. He's not just telling them what to do, he's reminding them who they are, the French, what they're fighting for, their national pride, their courage.
Tapping into that identity.
Precisely. His physical presence, on that white horse, combined with the directness, the simplicity of the message, it had this transformative effect. He was a performer, sure, but his performance was deeply rooted in understanding the psychology of his soldiers.
He knew which buttons to push.
He knew how to tap into their pride, their national identity, their shared purpose. And that kind of inspiration, it's very different from just giving commands. It goes beyond simple orders. It taps into this deeper wellspring of motivation, creates an emotional connection that makes people want to act beyond just duty.
It highlights that power of a leader's personal touch, their charisma, in getting people moving.
Definitely. Turning a weary army into this ignited force ready for anything. He was essentially saying, I see you, I'm right here with you, and together we are going to win. That personal connection, even among thousands, it was magnetic.
So from that moment of raw gut-level inspiration, Napoleon shifts gears again, seamlessly moves into concrete strategy. By 10:30 a.m., he's in a surprisingly basic setting, a barn-turned headquarters.
Yeah, no palace intrigue here.
Not at all. He's with his key advisors. Marshal Berthier, his chief of staff, the organizational genius, the guy who could turn Napoleon's big ideas into precise orders, and Marshal Davout, one of his most brilliant, most reliable field commanders, known for iron discipline, tactical skill.
The A-team.
Pretty much. And while they're apparently debating enemy weaknesses, potential moves, the sources make it clear. Napoleon already had a plan.
He was steps ahead.
Miles ahead, it seems. A brilliant, incredibly cunning plan. A feigned retreat to lure the enemy from the Pratzen Heights. Now, for anyone listening, the Pratzen Heights weren't just some random hills. They were the dominant, strategically vital high ground right in the center of the battlefield. Huge advantage. Views, artillery positions, everything.
Controlling the heights was key.
Absolutely. And Napoleon's plan was to pretend to abandon them, to look weak. His calm during this meeting was described as unshakable. He adjusted his plans like a chess master, predicting every move. And his exact words, they just drip confidence and foresight. They will descend from the high ground, and that will be their mistake.
Wow. That gives you chills, almost.
It does. This isn't just a meeting. It's watching a master strategist at work, playing the most complex, high-stakes game of chess imaginable.
In this scene, it really shows his premeditation, that rock-solid confidence. It gives us a crucial insight into his strategic genius. He wasn't just reacting to the intel his marshals were bringing. He was fitting it into this already well-developed, frankly ingenious strategy.
The feigned retreat. It seems incredibly risky.
It was an act of extreme audacity, designed to tempt the Allies, the Russians and Austrians, into making a fatal mistake, lure them down into the valley off the high ground, right where Napoleon's trap could spring. It completely defied the conventional military wisdom of always holding the high ground.
So it wasn't just about being strong, but being clever.
Exactly. Outwitting your opponent, not just outfighting them. And his calm, that unshakable demeanor, it underscores his mastery not just of the situation, but crucially, of his own emotions, which is such a defining trait for leaders under immense pressure.
What does that teach us, do you think?
Well, it teaches us about strategic foresight, the ability not just to plan the next step, but to visualize a whole sequence of events based on how you expect your opponent to react, thinking several layers deep. He understood that having a solid plan is vital, but you also need the flexibility to adjust it on the fly. Like a chess master who's thinking dozens of moves ahead but is still ready if the opponent does something unexpected.
He was playing multi-dimensional chess while they were playing checkers, maybe?
Something like that. He was setting a trap they simply couldn't resist walking into.
Okay, so even emperors, it turns out, gotta eat, though maybe not quite how you'd picture it. At 1 p.m., Napoleon takes a break for lunch, described as remarkably modest.
No feasts on the eve of battle.
Definitely not. Roast chicken, bread, a bit of wine. That's it. Apparently, he detested waste and luxury in the field, which, again, reinforces that whole soldier among soldiers image, a real contrast to the fancy lifestyles of many European monarchs at the time.
Keeps him grounded, connected to the troops, maybe.
Perhaps. But during this brief break, there's a moment, a flicker of personal connection. He reads letters from Josephine, his beloved and sometimes unfaithful wife.
Ah, Josephine. A complicated relationship there.
Very. And the sources capture this brief human moment of emotion. He smiled faintly, then frowned. A fleeting private thought amidst all the monumental public pressure. But then, the sources quickly add, his mind rarely lingered on love for long. Why? Because war demanded focus.
That's such a telling detail, isn't it? It's a rare glimpse into his personal life right in the thick of it all. The modest meal reinforces his practical, no-frills approach, aligning with his image, strengthening that bond with the common soldier.
And the letters.
The moment with Josephine's letters, the faint smile and the frown, it just highlights that constant tension between his personal feelings and his absolute, almost obsessive dedication to duty. It's a powerful example of mental compartmentalization.
Like putting feelings in a box to deal with later. Or never.
Pretty much. He allowed himself that brief emotional connection, but the immediate pivot back to the task at hand shows immense discipline. A ruthless prioritization, really. For leaders facing huge demands, managing that line between personal life and urgent work is always tough. Napoleon's swift return to focus shows this almost superhuman ability to channel all his mental energy onto the one critical thing.
His personal life was just secondary. A brief interlude before diving back into the all-consuming business of war.
Exactly. It's subtle, but it shows that even with all that pressure, he kept this Spartan simplicity in his personal habits, reinforcing that image. A leader unburdened by luxury, always ready for the next strategic move.
After that brief kind of personal moment, he sought a different kind of break. Solitude. Around 3:00 p.m., he went for a walk. Alone, in the snow, just for a few minutes. Hands clasped behind his back, that characteristic pose.
Taking a moment to himself.
Yeah, but listen to this. The sources say soldiers whispered as he passed by. Not with fear, apparently, but with awe. They'd say, almost like a prayer, he sees everything.
Wow. The legend in action.
Totally. And it was in this solitude, this quiet moment, that he worked out final details of tomorrow's battle. He was even heard muttering to himself, like he was solidifying his thoughts out loud. Strike hard, strike fast, and divide and conquer.
So it wasn't just a casual stroll. It was a final, critical mental rehearsal, strategic refinement.
Absolutely.
And it really raises that question again. How crucial is that kind of solitary reflection for complex problem solving, for decision making, especially when the stakes are this insanely high?
Even for someone constantly surrounded by people.
Right. Napoleon understood the deep importance of quiet contemplation for refining strategy. And the soldiers awe their belief that he sees everything. It just speaks volumes about his reputation for foresight, for understanding the whole picture. They almost saw him as having this supernatural ability to see and shape events.
And those muttered phrases, strike hard, strike fast, divide and conquer.
They're more than just catchphrases, aren't they? They encapsulate his entire strategic philosophy, his tactical DNA, you could say. Strike hard, strike fast. That's about concentrated force, rapid, decisive blows, especially effective against slower, more conventional armies like the allies he was facing.
And divide and conquer.
Especially relevant here, he's facing two allied armies, the Austrians and the Russians. That phrase is all about exploiting their potential lack of coordination, splitting their forces, and defeating them one piece at a time.
So in our world of constant emails, meetings, collaboration, Napoleon's need for these solitary moments really underscores the timeless value of quiet reflection in high-pressure situations.
Definitely. It allows you to internalize the plan, solidify it before the big execution. It's often in those moments of seemingly just thinking, staring into space, that the really complex problems get solved and the brilliant strategies lock into place.
As the day started to wind down, Napoleon's thinking stretched even further, way beyond the immediate battlefield. Around 5:00 p.m., with the battle just hours away now, he dictates another crucial letter. This one's to Talleyrand.
Ah, Talleyrand. His cunning foreign minister, as the sources put it, a master diplomat, very pragmatic, brilliant political operator.
Exactly. And what's fascinating here is that Napoleon is emphasizing the absolute need to control the narrative in Paris. He literally says victory is not only won on the battlefield, but in the minds of the people.
That's incredibly insightful and quite modern sounding, actually.
Isn't it? And he gives specific instructions. Make it known that this campaign is not just for France, but for the future of Europe. This reveals this holistic, almost startling understanding of warfare and political power.
Indeed. It demonstrates his incredibly sharp grasp of public relations, political maneuvering, even on the absolute eve of a massive battle. He wasn't just a military commander, he was a master statesman, and frankly, a pioneer in strategic communication.
He knew winning the battle wasn't enough.
Exactly. He knew a military victory, no matter how decisive, wouldn't have lasting impact or truly solidify his power unless it was framed correctly. For the public, for the political elite back home. It shows this complete view of warfare that goes way beyond just the fighting.
He understood that legitimacy, ongoing support for his rule, consolidating power,
Yeah.
It depended as much on perception as on the actual outcome on the ground.
Right. This preemptive communication, it was designed to head off any potential dissent, lock in support, and basically define the terms of his success before the first shot was even fired tomorrow.
It really highlights how relevant narrative control and strategic communication are in any major undertaking, military or otherwise. Still totally relevant today.
Absolutely. It's about shaping reality through the stories you tell. A practice just as vital back then as it is in our totally media-saturated world now. He was, in effect, weaponizing information and public opinion to secure not just a military win, but a political and ideological one too.
And then, as day turned fully into night, all that strategic genius, all that meticulous planning, it finally came together in concrete, actionable commands. By 8:30 p.m., the sources paint this really vivid picture. Torches flickered as couriers dashed in and out of his headquarters.
You can feel the urgency, the energy, the final communications rush.
Totally. Napoleon gives his final orders to Marshal Soult, stating with absolute precision, "At my signal, you will retake the heights." That's the key move, the Pratzen Heights, the linchpin of his whole plan.
The decisive counterattack.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Every movement was timed with military precision. Every single unit had its designated place in this incredibly complex choreography of battle. He knew, with this almost chilling certainty, that tomorrow would decide the fate of nations.
This was it, the culmination of the whole day's relentless effort, translating that grand vision into detailed execution.
It really is.
And this part highlights that crucial shift, doesn't it? From the big strategic vision to the nitty-gritty operational details, which is a massive undertaking. The flickering torches, the dashing couriers, it underscores the immense pressure, the sheer imminence of the battle.
It's where the grand strategy meets the reality on the ground.
Precisely, where thousands of individual soldiers' actions have to align perfectly with this single overarching plan. And his confidence in Soult, who had to lead that critical attack on the heights, and the exact timing, it says so much about his trust. Trust in his system, trust in his meticulously laid plans, and trust in his commander's ability to execute.
It's not just about barking orders.
Not at all. It's about orchestrating thousands of moving pieces with precision, and with this almost spooky certainty about the outcome. It shows that leadership at this scale demands not just the ability to see the future, but to break that vision down into clear, actionable steps and communicate them with absolute clarity and conviction.
That balance between the big picture and the tiny details.
Yeah.
It's incredibly hard to get right.
But Napoleon seems to have mastered it in those final tense hours before the dawn of Austerlitz.
So, as the clock ticks closer to midnight, the final hours before the battle, 11:30 p.m., the sources give us this vivid, almost unsettling final image for the day. Napoleon lies down again, still fully dressed, his sword at his side.
Ready, always ready.
His eyes closed, trying to get maybe a few hours of rest.
Yeah.
But his mind never stopped. He was about to face not one, but two emperors with one army. The combined power of Tsar Alexander of Russia and Emperor Francis II of Austria against his smaller, though incredibly disciplined, French forces.
The odds look stacked against him, on paper at least.
They really did.
Yeah.
And yet the sources conclude this account of December 1st with this almost defiant certainty.
Yeah.
And he would win.
No, and he would win.
Yeah.
If we connect that back to the bigger picture, that final scene, it's not just about him trying to rest, it's this profound testament to his complete psychological and strategic immersion.
He's not just dreaming of peace or even just the battle in some abstract way.
No, he's dreaming of conquest, you feel. His mind is utterly consumed by the mission. That image, fully dressed, sword, right there, it symbolizes his constant readiness, his unwavering dedication. It speaks to a level of psychological intensity required for that kind of leadership, where the line between waking and sleeping, between the self and the mission, just seems to completely blur.
Can a mind truly never stop?
For Napoleon, on that night, it seems like it couldn't. Even in sleep, his subconscious was probably still processing, strategizing, refining, and that final statement, "and he would win," it just screams supreme self-confidence. It's a critical part of his mental state on the eve of something so huge.
It suggests this absolute conviction, almost bordering on, like he already knew the outcome.
Predetermination, almost, which is a powerful mental advantage in itself. That kind of self-belief can influence not just his own actions, but the morale, the belief of everyone around him. It's the ultimate example of a leader's conviction shaping reality.
So what does this all mean for us? When we look back at this single, truly extraordinary day in Napoleon's life, December 1st, 1805, we can pull out some incredibly powerful lessons, right? nuggets of knowledge that apply far beyond any battlefield.
Absolutely. There are several key takeaways here.
Okay, first off, for me, it's his relentless discipline, that singular focus. It's clear from the moment he wakes up before dawn until he finally lies down, still fully dressed, mind still racing. He embodied total, unyielding dedication to his goal, squeezing every last drop of productivity out of the day.
Second, his meticulous preparation really stands out as a core principle. He blended that grand strategy like the incredibly bold, feigned retreat with absolutely precise tactical details, making sure every unit knew its place, understood its role. It wasn't just having a plan, it was refining it down to the finest detail, like that chess master anticipating every possible move.
And third, that profound ability he had to lead and inspire, even through simple things, like his choice of uniform, or those direct, powerful words to the troops from his white horse. He just intuitively understood the psychology of his army, knew exactly how to ignite their fighting spirit. His presence, even his Corsican accent, it was transformative.
Fourth, he really grasped that victory wasn't just about the physical battlefield. It reached deep into public perception, political reality. His foresight in telling Talleyrand to control the narrative back in Paris shows this deep understanding that military success needed political and popular backing to truly last. A surprisingly modern insight into strategic communication, really.
And finally, what really hits home for me is just the unwavering confidence, the sheer mental fortitude needed for leadership at that level. To face two emperors with one army, to lie down the night before the battle with such absolute certainty of winning, even while trying to rest. It's a testament to an incredible, maybe even unique psychological state.
It truly is. The mental strength is almost palpable.
So whether you, listening right now, are prepping for a big meeting, maybe tackling a really complex project, or just navigating the relentless demands of your own day, think about how Napoleon's approach here.
Yeah.
His preparation, his focus, his strategic thinking, how might that apply to the challenges you face? This deep dive, it really does feel like it reveals the inner workings of a mind operating at its absolute peak. A masterclass in strategic and psychological warfare.
It definitely forces us to reflect on the nature of ambition itself and dedication. While it was clearly effective, you do have to wonder about the human cost of that level of total immersion, that relentless pursuit of a single goal. Not just for him, but for everyone caught up in it.
That's a really important point. As the camp fell silent that night, with just the snow whispering outside, the emperor slept, dreaming, as the sources suggest, not of peace, but of conquest. It leaves you wondering, what kind of single-minded purpose, maybe even obsession, does it really take to shape the future of an entire continent?
And what's the personal cost? For the individual, for those swept along in their vision, what price is paid for that kind of immense, all-consuming focus?
It's a powerful question, something to definitely ponder long after this deep dive ends.